My husband slept with my sister for 14 months, and my own mother helped hide her pregnancy. She told her, she'll be fine, she always figures it out. So I brought 47 printed emails to her baby shower as my gift. The first smile to disappear wasn't hers. It was my mother's. My name is Delia. I'm 31, and I grew up understanding without anyone ever saying it out loud that my sister, Lisa, was the one our family had decided to protect. It wasn't dramatic. It rarely is, with these things. It was just the texture of daily life. The way my mother's voice went softer when Lisa called. The way a room reorganized itself slightly when Lisa walked in. She was 3 years younger than me, and she had this quality I can only describe as the assumption that everything around her would eventually arrange itself in her favor. Most of the time, it did. When it came time for college, my parents paid Lisa's full 4-year tuition, housing included. When I brought up my own plans, my mother sat me down at the kitchen table and slid a plain envelope across it. $2,000. We know you'll figure it out, she said. And the way she said it, warm, certain, a little proud, made it sound like a compliment. Like the fact that I could absorb whatever they didn't give me was a virtue rather than a transaction. I did figure it out. Student loans, 2 part-time jobs, a cheap apartment I shared with 3 other people for 2 years. I graduated. I built a life. I handled what was put in front of me, and I didn't make it anyone else's problem. That was just what I did. I met Garrett when I was 26. We married at 29. He was charming in that particular way that makes you feel chosen, attentive early on, good at saying the right things, good at making you feel like the most important person in whatever room you were both in. For a while, I believed it. What I didn't let myself believe, or what I noticed and then filed away, was a single moment at a family barbecue, about 3 years into the marriage. I walked into the kitchen to grab a drink and found Garrett and Lisa laughing together by the counter. Nothing I could name. Nothing explicit. Just the way the room shifted slightly when I came in. The way a door that had been open swung half closed. Garrett smiled at me. Lisa turned back toward the sink. I stood there for a second and decided it was nothing. I was good at that. 29 years of practice will do that to you. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I found out. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't looking for anything. Garrett had left his laptop open on the kitchen counter before heading out. I needed a charger. That's the whole story of how it started. I leaned past the laptop and a notification slid across the top of the screen. An email, 4 words in the subject line. 4 words were enough. I sat down and I opened it. What I found wasn't a single message. It was a thread long, continuous, the kind that had clearly been going on for a while. I scrolled all the way to the bottom to find where it started. The first email was sent on April 11th, 11:42 p.m. I stared at that date until I placed it. April 11th was my birthday. That evening, the 5 of us, me, Garrett, my parents, and Lisa, had gone to dinner at a restaurant we didn't go to often. We got home around 10. Garrett told me he was tired and went to bed early. He hadn't gone to sleep. I read the entire thread without getting up from that chair. 47 emails. 14 months of correspondence, laid out in timestamps, in his words and hers, specific enough that there was nothing left to interpret and nowhere left to hide. I read every single one. I needed to see the full shape of it before I let myself feel any of it. Then I found the link. A shared folder, attached inside one of the later emails. I clicked it. Photographs. Garrett and Lisa unmistakable, in places I recognized. I scrolled through them one by one, and then I stopped. One of the photos had a caption. Lisa had typed it herself, the same casual tone she used for everything, like it cost her nothing. She'll never find this. I closed the laptop. I sat in that kitchen and didn't move for a long time. And I thought, she was wrong about that. She was wrong about a lot of things. But she didn't know that yet, and for now, that was exactly where I needed her to stay. I didn't confront Garrett that night. I waited until the next morning, when he came downstairs and found me at the kitchen table with his laptop open and 47 emails printed out in a stack in front of me. He stopped in the doorway. I didn't say anything. I just looked at him. He tried denial first. That's not what you think it is. I slid the first page across the table, dated April 11th, 11:42 p.m., sent from his personal account to my sister's. He looked at it. He didn't pick it up. Then he tried minimization. It was a mistake, he said. It got out of hand. It didn't mean anything. He used the word mistake the way people use it when they mean I got caught, not I did something wrong. I noticed that. I asked him how long. He said a few months. I turned the stack of papers to face him and spread them so he could see the date range across the top of each page. 14 months. He looked at the spread and then looked away. Then he said, "You're making this bigger than it needs to be." Quietly. Reasonably. Like he was doing me a favor. Lisa didn't mean for this to happen. She's going through a hard time. You know how she gets. I stared at him. He was standing in my kitchen, in front of 47 printed emails, and he was already running her defense. "I need you to leave," I said. He left. I stayed at the table. I opened the laptop again because something about Lisa didn't mean for this to happen didn't sit right with me. I'd read 47 emails. I knew what she'd meant. Inside the shared folder were files I hadn't fully gone through the night before. Past the photographs, there was a second thread. Not between Garrett and Lisa. Between Lisa and my mother. The subject line read, "About D." The earliest message was from 6 months ago. My mother had written, "We need to handle this carefully. We need to protect her image." She wasn't talking about me. I kept reading. 3 pages in, she'd written something I recognized, a phrase I had heard my entire life, always delivered with warmth, always meant to make me feel capable rather than disposable. She had written it to my sister, about me, inside a thread dedicated to keeping me in the dark. "Delia will be fine. She always figures it out." I read that sentence 4 times. And then I understood something I hadn't understood before. My resilience had never been a compliment. It had been a permission slip. A reason not to tell me. A reason not to choose me. I closed the laptop. I picked up my phone. I had one more conversation to have before I decided what to do with all of it. I drove to my parents' house that afternoon. I didn't call ahead. My mother answered the door and her face did something complicated. Not surprise, exactly. More like the expression of someone who had been waiting for this knock and had hoped it would take longer to arrive. She let me in. My father was in the living room. He stayed there. I sat down at the kitchen table and told her what I'd found. The emails, the photographs, the thread between her and Lisa with the subject line about D. I laid it out in the order I'd found it. No dramatics, just the sequence of facts. She didn't deny the thread. She didn't deny knowing. What she did was pivot immediately to the thing she does best. "What good does dragging this out do for anyone?" she said. "Family handles things privately. You know that." She folded her hands on the table. "Lisa is your sister. Whatever happened, she is your sister. She slept with my husband for 14 months, I said. You knew for 6 of them. You helped her hide it. You're overreacting." Her voice was patient, practiced. "It was a mistake. These things are more complicated than you're making them. You don't know what Lisa was going through." From the doorway, my father cleared his throat once. That was his contribution. I asked my mother directly, "When were you going to tell me?" She looked at the table. She said something about timing, about waiting for the right moment, about not wanting to cause pain. I let her finish. Then I asked again. She looked at her hands instead of at me. That was when she mentioned the pregnancy. She didn't lead with it. She folded it into a sentence about Lisa's emotional state, about how much pressure Lisa had been under lately, about how the situation was delicate. And then, almost as a footnote, almost like it was background information rather than a detonation, she said Lisa was pregnant. 3 months along. I didn't respond. "You need to think about what you're doing," my mother said, and her voice had changed, less damage control now, more warning. "You cannot go after her right now. She's pregnant. Think about what that does to an innocent baby. Think about what this does to this family." I thought about the baby. I thought about the timeline. 14 months. 3 months. I thought about the text I was going to send Garrett the moment I got back to my car. I stood up. "I'll be in touch," I said. I drove home and did the math. Lisa was 3 months pregnant. The affair had started 14 months ago. I texted Garrett one question. "Is the baby yours?" He didn't respond for 6 hours. I made coffee I didn't drink. I sat on the couch while the afternoon turned into evening and the evening turned into night, and I watched my phone and thought about the baby shower my mother had already started planning. 62 guests. A hotel venue already booked. Cream-colored invitations going out within the week. At 9:47 p.m., 2 words came through. "I don't know." I put the phone down, and I thought, 60. 2 people were about to walk into a room and celebrate a story that had been constructed entirely around my silence. Every invitation sent, every seat filled, every toast raised, all of it built on the assumption that I would stay quiet. That I would, as always, figure it out. I picked up a pen. I started making a list. The next morning I texted Lisa. I kept it simple. I told her I knew about the emails and the photographs, and I asked her directly, was Garrett the father of her baby? Her response came back in under 2 minutes. Not a denial that took time to construct an immediate, reflexive swing. She said I was being pathetic. She said I was doing exactly what you always do, making everything about yourself. She told me to move on, that whatever I thought I had wasn't what I thought it was. And then, at the end, one final line. No one will believe you anyway. I read that twice. Then I screenshot it, opened the folder on my phone I'd created the night before, and saved it with everything else. Because that sentence wasn't a dismissal. It was a calculation. Lisa wasn't telling me I was wrong. She was telling me she had already run the numbers and decided the family system would hold that I would absorb this the way I absorbed everything, quietly, and the story would stay hers to tell. I put my phone down and got to work. Over the next 2 weeks, I assembled everything. I printed the full email thread, 47 emails, organized by date, clipped into sections. I drove to an office supply store and had the photographs enlarged. The woman at the counter asked if I needed them mounted. I said no. I paid $12.40 and drove home. I laid it all out on my kitchen table. The email thread. The enlarged photographs, including the one with Lisa's own caption, still visible underneath. The screenshots of the thread between my mother and Lisa's subject line about my mother's words, we need to protect her image, in plain black ink on white paper. And at the back of the stack, last and smallest, Lisa's final text. No one will believe you anyway. Every piece of evidence, organized in the order it would hit hardest. Then I thought about 62 people sitting down in a hotel banquet room in 3 weeks' time, raising their glasses to a version of events constructed entirely around my silence. 62 people who had never been given a choice about what to believe, because no one had ever shown them what I was looking at right now. Yet, I slid everything into a large flat document envelope, put it in a gift bag, and wrote the tag myself, from Delia. With love. A few days later, the invitation arrived. Cream-colored cardstock, gold stars along the border, pink ribbon threaded through the top. My name hand-addressed on the envelope in my mother's cursive, the same handwriting that had signed my birthday cards for 29 years. The same hand that had written Delia will be fine in a cover-up thread 6 months ago. I set the invitation on my kitchen counter. I looked at it every morning. The gold stars. The careful loops of my mother's cursive. The date in the center, moving closer by the day, 2 weeks, 1 week, 3 days. I RSVP'd yes. I told my mother I was bringing a special gift. She said she was so glad I was coming. In the 3 weeks between building that case and walking into that hotel banquet room, I thought seriously about what I was doing. Not because I was wavering, because I owed it to myself to be honest about the full cost of both options before I committed to either one. If I stayed silent, here is what happened. Garrett walked away from our marriage without being held accountable in front of a single person who knew us both. Lisa's reputation stayed exactly as my mother had worked to keep it intact, protected, golden. The baby arrived and the family's version of events calcified around it, a story with my silence built into its foundation. My parents continued functioning as Lisa's damage control team. And I continued being the person who always figured it out, absorbing the cost of other people's choices alone, indefinitely, because I had spent 31 years demonstrating that I would. That wasn't a hypothetical. That was the pattern, and I had the data to prove it. There was also the financial reality. Garrett and I had a joint account, a shared lease, expenses tangled in the way two people's lives get tangled after years together. None of that was going to resolve cleanly regardless of what I did. But silence came with its own price, handing Garrett a narrative. The difficult ex-wife. The one who couldn't let go. I had watched my mother manage me my entire life with that kind of framing. I was not going to hand Garrett the same tool. The risk of going public was real, and I named it plainly. I would be called vindictive. My mother would frame the baby shower as a scene, a woman who couldn't handle her sister moving on. Lisa would lean into the pregnancy, and there would be people in that room who would look at a visibly pregnant woman and look at me and make a calculation that had nothing to do with the evidence in the folder. I accepted that, because the people who would call me vindictive were the same people who had accepted my mother's version of events without ever being shown mine. I wasn't trying to win them back. I wasn't looking for a verdict. I was making sure that no one in that room could ever say, afterward, that they hadn't known. I was closing the information gap. That was all. 3 days before the shower, Lisa texted me. I hope you're not going to make this weird. It's my day. Can you just be happy for me? I read it once. Set my phone down next to the Gold Star invitation on the kitchen counter. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say privately. Whatever needed to be said was already in the envelope, already labeled, already sitting in the gift bag by my front door. After everything she had asked me to be happy for her. That was the last thing she said to me before Saturday. I arrived at the hotel 20 minutes early. The banquet room was already set. Pale pink tablecloths, pastel balloon clusters in every corner, a banner above the mantel spelling out Lisa's name in gold script. Tall windows along the far wall, 62 chairs and a horseshoe around the central gift table. At the mantel, a framed portrait of Lisa, hands folded over her stomach, the picture of someone the world had organized itself around. I set my gift at the end of the table. Flat. Professionally wrapped. I took a seat in the second row, close enough to watch faces. My mother spotted me from across the room. She smiled wide, relieved, the expression of a woman who believed the situation was still under her control. I smiled back. I had been doing that for a long time. One more hour wasn't going to be a problem. The shower ran its course. Word scramble games, a toast from my aunt, mimosa refills, the chocolate diaper game that made everyone shriek. My mother gave a speech about what a natural Lisa was going to be, how some people are simply made for this, how lucky the baby was to be coming into such a loving family. I sat in the second row and listened to all of it. I had already done my grieving. This part was logistics. When the gift opening started, the room leaned in that particular attentive energy where everyone is ready to react. Lisa sat in the center chair and worked through the pile with the ease of someone who had opened gifts in front of an audience her whole life. A stroller system still in the box. A diaper bag with her initials embroidered on the front. Onesies in 4 colors. The room exclaimed and applauded in all the right places. My gift was near the end of the row. Lisa reached for it. She looked at the tag, looked up at me across the room, and smiled warm, easy, unbothered. The same smile she had been giving me since we were children, the one that meant, everything is fine, and I already know how this ends. She tore the paper off. Inside was a large flat document folder, clear-faced. The top sheet was visible through the cover. A photograph, enlarged to the size of a piece of paper. Unmistakable. The smile left her face in stages. First the warmth, then the ease, then whatever was underneath, something I had never seen on her before, something she didn't have a name for yet. The room went quiet. Not the pause between gifts. The kind of quiet where everyone understands something has just changed and no one knows what to do with their hands. I stood up. I didn't raise my voice. I wanted to make sure everyone here had every piece of evidence before they decided what to celebrate. I let that sit for a half second. That folder has the email thread between my husband and my sister, 47 emails, 14 months, the first one sent the night of my birthday dinner. It has the photographs, including the ones Lisa captioned herself. It has the texts between Lisa and my mother, where my mother explains that the family needs to protect her image. And it has the last text Lisa sent me, where she told me that no one would believe me anyway. The room didn't move. I brought copies, I said. They're on the table. Everything happened at once and somehow slowly. My mother rose from her chair, hands out, voice dropping to something sharp and controlled. Delia, that is enough. You stop right now. I turned to her. I kept my voice the same temperature it had been all afternoon. You told Lisa I always figure it out, I said. You were right. She stopped moving. Lisa was still holding the folder with both hands, not opening it, not setting it down, frozen somewhere between those two things, with 62 people looking at her. For the first time in 31 years, she had nothing to say and no performance to fall back on. Garrett was seated near the back of the room. He had gone very still and a color that wasn't quite right. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at Lisa. He looked at the floor. Near the side table, a woman I had known since childhood picked up the folder and opened it. She read the first page slowly. She turned to the second. The woman beside her leaned over without being invited. Then a third. No one stopped them. No one tried. Garrett's sister stood up from the far row. She picked up her purse. She walked straight to the exit without looking at her brother once. Not a glance, not a pause, nothing. The door swung shut behind her. My mother said something else. I had already stopped listening. I reached down, picked up my bag, and pushed my chair back. I walked out of that hotel and sat in my car for a few minutes without starting the engine. Not because I needed to recover, I just wanted one moment of quiet before the rest of it began. Then I drove home. The calls started that evening. My mother, 3 times. My father once. An aunt I hadn't spoken to in 2 years. I let all of them go to voicemail. I had said everything I needed to say, in front of the right people, and there was nothing left to negotiate privately with anyone who had spent 6 months choosing not to negotiate with me. Garrett moved out within the week. The lease, the joint account, the furniture we had picked out together on a Saturday 3 years ago, all of it took time, the way those things do. Not clean, but it resolved. A few weeks later, the paternity question resolved too. It confirmed what the math had suggested. I'll leave the rest of that where it belongs in a story that isn't mine to carry anymore. What I know is this. The man Lisa had been presenting as her partner quietly disappeared from her life within a month of the shower. My mother called a 5th time. I didn't pick up. About 6 weeks out, a message came from a woman who had been near the side table that afternoon, one of the first people to open the folder. She wrote, "I had no idea. I'm so sorry." I read it, set my phone down, and made dinner. It wasn't a victory lap. It was just someone finally receiving the information she should have had much earlier, and responding like a decent person when she did. That was the thing about that afternoon. I hadn't gone there to win. I had gone there because I was done being the piece of evidence no one was allowed to see. Done being the person my family kept in the dark so they could protect her image. Done figuring it out alone while everyone else stayed comfortable. I stopped waiting for them to acknowledge what they had done. I had already given the truth to 62 people who had never been shown it before. That was enough.